We've been exploring this idea of combined arms in Battletech. And certainly you can play Battletech mechs only. You could play vehicles, infantry only, or a mix of both of them. The biggest challenge, the biggest problem that I see with Battletech, there's just not enough battle value. I want like 2 lances on the table, plus like 2 battle groups. I want infantry support. I want artillery. I want air support. It's a lot, and certainly you can play a big game like that, and they're a lot of fun, but there are always decisions to be made. And what I wanted to explore in this vlog, because we reviewed some mechs, and we're going to get back to some medium mechs. I have a list of medium mechs that, for a variety of reasons, at least in my experience, and it'd be interesting to get that feedback from you guys, my fellow Battletech enthusiasts, about 6 medium mechs that I'm looking at that we don't regularly see on the table as much. They're not played as much. So why? You're like, Fritz, I play that mech all the time. But also just to look and ask that question, if we're acquiring a new mech or we're going to utilize a new mech, let's build a checklist to get some ideas of what opportunities it presents on the table. So that we're going to jump back to that, but I wanted to frame and push up, since we were exploring vehicles. We looked at the Bulldog, and we've been looking at some other vehicles. A tank checklist. What are some of the things that you are looking for tank-wise without naming specific tanks? So as you navigate the tech manuals, as you navigate the 3D printing, as you acquire some more models, you can have that checklist. You can begin to have that plan. Okay, jumping in. Now, I'm not going to frame and jump into like the exact tactic of how to utilize a tank. I've pushed that up, but we do have to kind of touch on the framework here because there are some new Battletech players to the channel, and I want to kind of lay that foundation. Generally speaking, you can get more armor and more guns on a tank than you can for a mech. The battle value is less or significantly less. So when you explore that and you're like, wait, I can get all these PPCs on a mech or a tank and the tank is cheaper, why am I not jumping in? Plus heat issues and other things that don't apply to tanks, just go all tanks. Well, it balances out in the rules in terms of mobility. Tanks navigate terrain differently, physical attacks, but also the critical attacks and the ways that tanks work in the rules. The primary thing is you take motive hits. And I'm mentioning this because this framework is important into the selection of your tanks. Motive hits represent the tracks getting jammed, armor getting blown off. Eventually the tank moves less and less, and maybe you become immobilized. And the facing is huge. Getting hit straight on versus side on. So from that perspective, you realize, yes, you're paying less battle value for a tank, but there are disadvantages that you need to navigate. So the first thing I'm looking for in a tank, I can't necessarily say armor, because much like mechs, well, what's good armor for a tank? Depends on the weight class that we're going to buy in. And if I have less armor, there better be a reason for it. An example would be a partisan. The partisan tank, which I've pushed up to the channel here, essentially it's an anti-air tank. It's got 4 autocannons. It has okay armor for the weight class, but a little bit less than you might like. Well, this thing, besides just zapping air support, is a long-range tank and actually is really great outside of air support. Low battle value buy-in, extreme range, 4 shots, lots of ammo. Just blast away, get in a good position, hull down, and blast away. So we want to look at armor. The main thing for me, of course, is the weapons profile. I tend to like tanks that are at long range to medium range. They can have some short range firepower, some short range weapons, but I want to have the ability to push out and project. There are a few tanks. Can we call an SRM carrier, short range missile carrier, a tank? Yes. Technically, I guess it's a missile carrier. But the challenge here, of course, it is such short range that if it gets immobilized or damaged at range, you're in a lot of trouble. If I can catch you short off, you're going to eat a lot of SRMs. The reason why I want that long range is because tanks are going to take motive hits. And as the game progresses and I can move less and less and less, I still want to be able to project out. There are a couple of tanks that are dedicated to short range. I feel like they're for city fight, city tech, or like a specialized mech. Very, very unique with their Tactica. Again, we could have some short range weapons, but I want to have some sort of PPC, autocannon, LRM pack, then going into kind of mediums, pushing that out. I want to have that long range. So at the very least, if I get immobilized, then okay, I can still project. I can still threat. Second to that, turrets are important. Some mechs don't have a turret. Some weapons are not all mounted on the turret. I feel like I want that primary weapon or two on a turret because, again, this way, if I become immobilized, I've got that 360-degree projection. There's also times where if you're in city fight, city tech, and you're navigating things, I might be hull down, the armor slab front facing hull down against the lance coming in. I want to stay that way, but now like a bug mech or something appears over to my right, trying to flank. Well, I want to shoot at that, but I don't want to change the facing of my vehicle. I want to turn the facing of the turret. Now, tanks that have all their weapons in a turret versus not, an example would be a Demolisher, 2 autocannon 20s in a turret. If it does get immobilized, I've got that 360-degree projection. The weakness of a vehicle is you could get a turret lock. You could take that, and if all of your weapons are in the turret, you're in trouble. But we see this with a mech also. If I have my primary weapon in the right arm and it gets blown off, so as damage happens, I'd like to ideally not have all of my weapons in the turret, but I feel like that's important. I could say it's mandatory. I look for anti-infantry weapons in my tank. And thankfully, a lot of them do. They just come with machine guns. And if you look at that, you say, well, what's a machine gun going to do against a mech? No, that's against infantry because infantry can really mess up tanks really, really badly. Because again, these motive hits, taking them and crits, you could immobilize based on the spread of infantry. We were playing a city fight game. House Davian moving in on my mercs. I had the core of the city defending it. I was the defender. The attacker was coming in on 3 different places. So I had a ring of infantry. I didn't know where they were going to come in. So I wanted to spread out my infantry, kind of this outer ring in different buildings. And we were playing hidden deployment, kind of marked down where things are. They're moving some tanks in. Von Luckner, which is a very, very powerful, heavy tank. Got to watch out against mechs. It's literally just moved on the map. We're playing on my dining room table. This is going to be like a massive game. This is going to be hours. This is literally turn 1. It happens in Battletech. The tank's moving down the street, moving in. My infantry pop out, hit it with SRM packs, and I chew the motive hits. I cause some crits. Admittedly, I got lucky, but I was able to catch that tank on the side and mostly on the back when I popped out. I immobilized it. It's done. Now, we weren't playing with the force withdrawal or the abandonment rules. So now this tank is, however many battle value, completely immobilized for the game. That's it. And now we're like 10, 15, 20 turns in. The action is in the center around this hospital and university building where there's some lost tech being experimented on. And all the way on the right side of the board is just the Von Luckner hanging out. We didn't remove it from the table. My opponent didn't trash it. Had to remember it when we packed up. Because it is technically an initiative point. It is an initiative sync. It still has that initiative. So I look for that. I want a machine gun. I want to be aware of infantry. I still might get ambushed. I could get hot dropped, but at least I've got something to blast them that is going to effectively do that. That's kind of the template that I begin to look as then I slot in and I jump into the specific tanks, many of them that I've had the good chance to review and push up here to the Battletech playlist. So I'm going to turn it over to my fellow mech commanders, these new mech commanders to the game, getting you guys in the game. If you're thinking about making that jump to combined arms, what are some of the things you're starting to look at? What would be that not tank specific, but tank list, overall tank list that we're looking for, that you're considering when looking at the battle value and the capacity of the tanks? What would be on that checklist?